Robert Johnson had seldom, if ever, been away from the plantation in Robinsonville, Mississippi, where he was born and raised. It was obvious he wanted to get away, but never could. The album was produced largely through the instigation of the noted producer John Henry Hammond II, who had championed Johnson's work as early as the 1930s. King of the Delta Blues Singers was a landmark for several important reasons. It made Robert's music available to a new generation and audience, mostly young whites who were involved in the folk music revival. It boldly proclaimed Robert to be the king of the Delta Blues Singers. There was no one better. As the first major label reissue of any of the guitar-oriented country blues artists from the 1920s or 1930s, there was no other music to compare it to. Robert Johnson was it, the new generation's first experience in hearing the Delta Blues. And it strongly influenced such future trendsetters as a young Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, and Keith Richards. They became Robert Johnson proselytizers. That release created new interest in all things Robert Johnson. His legacy and life were already being researched by scholars similar in age to or slightly younger than Charters, such as Mac McCormick and co-author Gayle Dean Wardlow. But this release coincided with the launching of the blues revival. It sent young record collectors and fans seeking out bluesmen who recorded in the 1920s and 30s, and in the process they found Son House, Skip James, and others who actually knew Robert. Then, in 1968, Gayle Dean made a historical discovery, locating Robert's death certificate. He also conducted a number of interviews in the 1960s with people who knew Robert personally, providing the first factual information about his life. In 1970, Columbia issued a second volume of Robert's songs with only 3 brief paragraphs of liner note information. There, blues writer Pete Welding maintained and added to Robert's myth by proclaiming, "Nor the blues are so apocalyptic in their life view. They are shot through with dark foreboding and almost total disenchantment with the human condition, and besetting mindless terrors that taunted all his days and nights. His songs are the diary of a wanderer through the tangle of the black underworld, the chronicle of a sensitive black Orpheus in his journey along the labyrinth path of the human psyche. In his songs, one hears the impassioned, unheeded cries of a man, rootless and purposeless. The acrid stench of evil burns ever in his mind." In 1973, Mac McCormick, a folklorist from Houston, Texas, who had already revived the career of Sam Lightnin' Hopkins, located Robert's half-sister, Carrie Harris Thompson. She showed him 2 photos of Robert. One was the now famous Hooks Brothers studio portrait, and the other, unpublished and supposedly still in McCormick's collection, was a photo of Robert, his half-sister Carrie, and her son Louis in his Navy uniform. Finding Carrie launched McCormick into a decades-long search for additional factual information. Eventually, he found the man who had accidentally murdered the bluesman. McCormick planned to use his information to write a definitive book about Johnson, tentatively titled Biography of a Phantom. But the book never happened. Sam Charters re-entered the Robert Johnson universe in 1973 with a new book simply titled Robert Johnson. Charters used Robert's death certificate, found by Gayle Dean, to focus on his story. He questioned Robert's birthplace as listed on the certificate and argued that Robert had to have been born in the Delta, since Hazelhurst is south of Jackson, about 35 miles out of it on Route 51 in Copiah County, and everybody else who knew Robert had always said he was from the Delta, north of Jackson in Tunica County.